Welcome to the Every Brain is Different podcast. It is Samantha and Lauren here with you. And before we get started, we are going to talk about masking today, but I wanted to talk a little bit about mom guilt. And I walked into a situation this week or last week where a mom was not being her best self and she was having a hard time. And I texted her the next day, and I talked to her that day, obviously, but then I texted her the next day and I was like, just remember you're a great mom if you need that reminder. She's like, yeah, I was not a great mom yesterday. And I said, that's okay. We cannot be great all the time. And if you need to hear that, that's my message.
Yeah. No one's perfect. Give yourself grace.
Yeah. Ooh, someone gave me a grace card today because I was getting down on myself. I facilitate a mastermind and I was late today and I didn't go last week because of just things that came up in the business that could not be delayed. And I was like, I'm so sorry. This is unexcusable, blah, 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 blah. And this woman held up a grace card and she was like, basically, stop it. Like, you are given grace. We are here to support each other. It's fine. And yeah, so if you're a mom and you're worried about, you're not fulfilling your commitments or you didn't have a great mom moment with your child, just remember to give yourself grace because even if you're doing all the things, quote unquote, right, you're still going to have hard moments. You're still going to have days where you're not your best self, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Things happen. You can be doing all the self-care in the world and trying to regulate your body, and sometimes you're going to yell or sometimes you're going to talk maybe not the way that you want to talk to your child, and that's what apologies are for. And that's when you're like, I'm sorry, I lost my cool, or I'm sorry, I didn't keep this commitment, just let it go.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's fine. It's fine.
Tomorrow's a new day. There's always tomorrow.
Yeah. And your kid's gonna forgive you. I mean,
yeah.
It's unless you're abusing them, which you're not a great mom if you're abusing them. So
That's a whole other topic.
That's a whole other thing, but your kid's still gonna love you. They're still gonna think you're amazing, all of that. So anyway, so today we are talking about masking, and masking is when a child pretends they're okay at school and they keep everything together and then they get home and completely unravel at home.
Floodgates open.
Yes. And you can feel like a terrible parent in this moment because you're like, well, my kid keeps it together at school and then they just completely unravel at home. And so obviously I'm doing something wrong, but no, you're doing something right because your
Even
kid
better.
Yeah, your kid is able to be themselves at home, and they've built up so much anxiety and just overstimulation that they've been keeping in the whole day that when they get home, they finally feel safe enough to let it go. And I know I've said this on here before, but my sister one time, my mom said, "Why are you amazing at school and just sometimes not so amazing at home, why are you so grumpy?" She didn't say not so amazing. She said grumpy or something like that. And my sister said, I am around people all day long and I can lose it at school or I can lose it at home. I cannot keep it in the whole day. So which one? Which one do you want me to lose it at? And my mom's like, definitely at home. Let's not do that at school. And so that's just what our kids are going through. And that's not to say every time they're having good behavior, they're masking, But the goal is to make school a safe place where they still have good behavior, but they're not completely overstimulated. So a lot of parents, they'll say their kid gets home from school and, they're trying to manipulate them or they're saving the worst for you or all of that. And this is not what your kids are doing. Like, just remember your kid is having a hard time. They're not purposely
Yeah.
giving you a hard time. They are having a nervous system response because they're overstimulated. They have been keeping it in all day long and they finally get home and they let it out. And then there's a capacity difference between environments. So their tank is full of overstimulation when they get home from school. And so let's say you have a kid with pathological demand avoidance who kind of freak out, even if you say, "How was your day?" Because that is a demand placed on them. You're asking them how their day was, and they don't know what to say, but they know they have to answer. And so they just blow up because their capacity to handle demands is completely gone. And so you're wondering, well, what did I say? What did I do wrong? Well, you didn't do anything wrong. They were just at capacity to handle demands. And so, yes, this means that home is emotional safety and school is a performance environment where they're putting on a performance. And so we need to find a way to make school also have emotional safety. But we're going to talk a little bit more about masking. And then next week in our episode, we're going to talk about how to make school an emotional safety place. So, why is behavior worse at home? Like we said, the nervous system can finally release. There's less need to mask, to suppress their needs, follow constant demands, all of that. And so they are able just to relax. And that's a good thing. And so it's like holding your breath all day long and then finally exhaling when you get home. They're finally able to just be themselves. But because they're so overstimulated, that comes out in negative ways. But just remember that if this is happening, your child feels safe with you. And
They know
safe,
they're gonna get that unconditional love.
yeah. They know that you're going to love them no matter what. They also know when they're at school, people might not accept them if they don't mask. And so they're going to mask at school so they have friends. And they're going to mask at school so the teacher likes them so they don't get in trouble. So blah, like it goes on and on and on. But they know that you love them unconditionally. No matter how they act, you're still going to love them. And it just means that it's safe to fall apart, where we need to be teaching them how to feel safe at school and how to have the appropriate accommodations at school so they feel safe at school. And then when they're home, teaching them the appropriate coping skills so they don't just completely fall apart, because that is not good for your nervous system to be like suppressing your natural responses to meet the expectations of the school all day, every day. That is not healthy. And so just masking at school all day, coming home and falling apart, that doesn't feel good either. Like, your child doesn't like falling apart. So we need to help them not have to mask at school. But that is very tricky because other people have to be involved.
Right?
Because
Takes a village.
masking can look like the teacher forcing eye contact. Like, look at me when I'm talking to you. Why?
Yeah.
Why don't we need to stop forcing eye contact like yesterday? And then also staying still when your body needs movement. And the teacher will be like, you need to sit in your chair. Why? Why do we need to sit in the chair? Like, they can do the same thing standing up, or they can go for a walk out in the hall and then come back in. It's like today when I was doing my meetings, I was in meetings for 3 hours, just sitting at my desk, and I almost lost my mind. At the end of it, or 3.5 hours. And at the end of it, I didn't have to get up and get a drink. I just needed to move. And so I excused myself and I'm like, I'm still listening, but I have to go get something right now. And I just need to move. And
Yeah.
so there needs to be accommodations for that in school if your kid is just sitting all day and they need to move, like let them get up and move.
They're
And
not
then,
meant to sit for 8 hours.
oh,
No one
for
is.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, there's just simple accommodations that can be made for masking. Social masking is harder. So if your kid is masking for friends, that's definitely harder than if they're masking for like sitting still and making eye contact because you can't write an IEP for friends. And so that's a little harder to help with that. But you can write accommodations into an IEP or into a 504 plan so that they're not having to make forced eye contact with the teacher, or they're not having to sit when they need to move, or they're not following rules at the cost of internal comfort. And so there's different things that we can do for that, which we're going to talk about that later. Um, but there is a cost of masking. And, in addition to the anxiety, there's cognitive fatigue, emotional exhaustion, and sensory overwhelm.
We're talking a lot about school, and then you brought up like social, like masking with friends. And I
Mm-hmm.
just want to bring up this can happen with different parents too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're on their better behavior for one parent versus the other. Even if they're like same family or if it's a split family, like that can happen too. And it doesn't mean that if you get the brunt of the meltdown, that doesn't mean you're the worst parent by any means. Um, so I just wanted to kind of throw that out there because I think that happens a lot. I've seen it happen a lot. So,
Yeah, for sure. So when I have people that talk about, like the one parent who has the better behavior will be like, well, the kid has better behavior with me, so you're obviously doing something wrong. And they'll say that to the parent that has the worst behavior, when in reality, the person who has the worst behavior is probably the safe parent. And I am not saying that the other co-parent is doing anything wrong if the other
yeah.
parent is a safe parent. I'm just saying that's who the kid considers to be their safe parent. And so that's why they are having worse behavior with them, because for some reason they are masking with the other parent. And
Hmm.
that can happen whether you're doing anything wrong or not. Like you could be
Yeah.
doing everything right and your kid, like, quote, in quotes, right. But yeah, I think that's definitely something to dig into. Like if your kid is having worse behavior with your co-parent, look into why. What is that co-parent doing? They're not doing anything like quote unquote wrong. Maybe that's just who the kid considers to be their safe parent. And
Mhm.
that's why they're having those meltdowns with them. So it's just something to think about. It doesn't mean they're doing anything wrong or they're a worse parent because the kid is having meltdowns with them. Definitely not. So, we're going to talk about cognitive fatigue, emotional exhaustion, and sensory overload. And cognitive fatigue is the mental load. So, it takes mental effort to focus, to follow directions, to switch tasks, inhibit impulses, and problem solve. What are all those things? Executive functioning skills. And what do neurodivergent people have problems with? Executive
Executive
functioning
functions.
skills. So these
Who'd have
things
thought?
require way more effort. Yeah, they require way more conscious effort, not less. So even if no one is even talking to the kid, they can be constantly reminding themselves, pay attention, don't talk, sit still, do this, do that, work harder. And then they also have to work harder to process instructions because maybe they have auditory processing disorder and it takes longer to process things. And then the teacher's already moved on. And then maybe they struggle through transitions because they weren't expecting the transition. So then they have to inhibit their response of maybe having a response to a sudden transition. And so they're inhibiting that. And then they want to ask questions, but there's no time to ask questions. So they have to inhibit that. And then maybe they do blurt out something that they want to ask. And the teacher's like, you're not supposed to be talking right now. So then they feel like they've been called out in front of the class. So then they're feeling shame. It's just a vicious cycle. And
A lot for a little kid.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so what looks like a normal school day for most kids is often super mentally exhausting for the kid who's neurodivergent because they're having problems with focusing, following directions, switching tasks, inhibiting their impulses, problem solving, all of that. And so this is just an analogy. It's like doing a full day of work while also being evaluated the whole time because they're evaluating themselves the whole time. I guarantee you, people who are neurodivergent think about other people's judgment way more. So they think their teacher is evaluating them the whole time. They think their peers are evaluating them the whole time. And they're probably not, but that's just what the kid is thinking. And so they are just cognitively exhausted. And by the time they get home, their brain is done making decisions, being flexible, tolerating new things. They're just done. They're done. And so, they get home and they might be looking forward to watching a TV show, for example. And they get home and the internet is out because who knows why. And they can't watch their show that they wanted to watch. Well, their ability to tolerate that and be flexible is gone. And so then they're going to have a meltdown. And you're going to be like, this isn't such a big deal. What are you doing? Well, it's because they're completely exhausted cognitively. So think about that. And then also think about emotional exhaustion. So, emotional exhaustion comes from constantly managing expectations, social interactions, fear of getting in trouble, feeling different. And this might look like trying to be good at school, trying to fit in, navigating confusing social roles where people are saying things that they don't really mean. And so then you have to navigate that. And then managing anxiety about making mistakes. So it's like going back to what I said before, where their teacher calls them out and they're like, I got called out in front of the entire class. And they just have to inhibit their impulse to want to run away. And then this is especially like thinking about emotional exhaustion is especially important for kids who are people pleasers, kids with rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and kids who are frequently corrected. Guess what? That's neurodivergent kids. Because if you have ADHD, especially, you have rejection sensitivity dysphoria, most likely. And neurodivergent kids are way more likely to be frequently corrected than neurotypical kids. And so just remember that many neurodivergent kids are in a constant state of low level stress because of all this going on. Even if they don't show it outwardly, the internal pressure is building. So the pressure, frustration, shame, anxiety, all of it is just building throughout the day.
The storm is a brewing.
Yeah. So you combine the emotional exhaustion with the cognitive exhaustion, and then that just combines even more if you don't just have one going on. And then you bring in sensory overload. So your child is already dealing with all this stuff. Even if they're in a perfect sensory environment, they are still dealing with all the emotional stuff, all the cognitive stuff. And then what if it's loud in the classroom? What if there's bright lights? What if there's crowded spaces or constant movement or the tag in their clothing did not get cut out before they put that brand new shirt on or unexpected noises? All of that. So that is like background noise for most people. Most people don't even realize that this is going on. But for many neurodivergent kids, it's foreground stress. So they are seeing the bright lights, they are hearing the loud classroom, and it's all front and center for them. It's not in the background. And so they're navigating all the exhaustion stuff, all the emotional stuff, all the cognitive stuff, in addition to being completely overstimulated by all the sensory stuff. And their nervous system is constantly working to filter, manage, and cope. So even if they're not reacting outwardly, their body is still processing all of it. And they might not even realize that their body is processing it. So by the time they get home, they are just completely wound up. And so just remember that all three of these things are working at the same time. Your child is mentally working harder than typical peers, emotionally managing stress, and physically processing overwhelming input all at once, all day long. So by the time they get home, their brain is depleted, their emotional capacity is low, their nervous system is overloaded. So when something small happens, like you say, "How was your day?" Or a sibling comes up to them and is like, "You're stupid," because they walked into the room and I don't know, kids are weird.
Siblings being siblings
Yeah, yeah.
for no reason.
Or you're like, "Oh, hey, I forgot to tell you that we have to go to the doctor today. I forgot to tell you that before school." Absolutely not. Like your kid is gonna like fly off the
I'm slamming
handle.
doors, okay?
Yeah, because of the accumulation throughout the whole day. So just remember that when your kid comes home and they seem kind of angry, that
Irritable, on edge.
that might be why. So just remember that there's a reason your kid is having a hard time. They're not giving you a hard time. They're not trying to manipulate you. They're not trying to have bad behavior.
Not about you.
It's not about you. It's not about you at
Except
all.
for that you're safe.
Except you're their safe person. It's not none of their behavior is about you except you're their safe person and they feel comfortable having a meltdown in front of you. And I know that is not easy to hear because that you want something that you can do so that they don't do those things, which we've talked about coping skills. And so we just need to teach our kids coping skills so they don't have those meltdowns. And we need to teach the school how to work with our kid so that they're not masking all day. But we'll talk about that later. So just remember, if your child is falling apart at home, it doesn't mean you're failing. It often means you've created a space where they can be real. So if you're trying to understand your child's behavior through a nervous system lens and you want support from other parents, you want support from me, you can join our parenting community at everybrainisdifferent.com. And we are coming out with some individual consulting options if you want to look at that. If you have a co-parent that maybe you guys aren't on the same page, that would be amazing for that. So you can both come talk about what's going on at both your households, get on the same page, because if you're doing something different than your co-parent, your child's just going to be confused. But if you can do the same thing, then your child won't be as confused. They'll know what to expect and behavior will improve. So yeah. Anyway, that's all I got. I was told this week that we shouldn't end podcasts like that, but that's how I'm ending it. So I hope you all have
We
a
do
great
what we
week.
want here at Every Brain is Different because we're different.
I love it. I love it. Okay. We will see you next week where we're going to have tips on how to work with your school so your child is not masking all day. So be excited for that.